The iPad Pro just got even more pro, but is the 2020 iPad Pro as Apple proclaims? Say that one 10 times fast. What's up YouTube, it's your boy, BMAC. And if this is your first time here to this channel, welcome, thanks for stopping by. Make sure you hit that subscribe button with all notifications turned on so that you never miss another video on this channel. And if you've been here before, or if you're already subscribed, welcome back. So today, we are gonna break down the new 2020 Apple iPad Pro. For those of you who know me, you know I'm a huge iPad fan. In fact, I've been hooked on the iPad ever since I got my first iPod ever with the 2018 iPad Pro. It has been an absolutely incredible piece of technology for all my on-the-go needs whenever I'm not by my iMac or in the studio with an actual desktop or laptop computer. Pretty much anything I have to get done within my daily workflow on the go, I could get done on the iPad. And all that's fine and dandy, that's great, but how does that relate to the new 2020 iPad Pro released in 2020? Well, we got a couple things to talk about. It's probably not what you think, so let's just get into it. First of all, as you guys could pretty clearly see, the design of the 2020 iPad Pro is pretty much identical to that of the 2018 iPad Pro. We still have square edges, which I am head over heels in love with. I hope the next iPhone has square edges, just saying. I love the thin and slim form factor all around. Such an incredible tablet. And I personally don't mind the bezels that we have on the iPad Pro. If it means not having an intrusive notch on the top of the display, I actually kinda like the bezels we have on the iPad. It makes it feel more complete. So all in all, with the design pretty much being the same, there wasn't a whole lot I'd like to see different on the iPad Pro to begin with. I love the design. The only thing I'd like to see is a flush camera housing with the actual body of the iPad Pro. That still to this day pisses me off. And despite a lot of similarities between the 2018 iPad Pro and the 2020 iPad Pro, there are some differences worth noting in the new model, so that's what we're gonna break down today in this review video. The first thing being, pretty clearly, the new camera housing. On the new camera system in the 2020 iPad Pro, you still do have that 12 megapixel f1.8 main camera, but now we also do have the addition of an ultra wide camera. You do now get a 10 megapixel f2.4 125 degree ultra wide camera in addition to that main camera. And I suppose that's a cool and welcome addition, but I'm gonna be real with you guys here. Personally, I don't know anybody, and I certainly don't use my iPad Pro for any kind of photography. I think I could honestly say I have taken maybe 4 photos or less on my 2018 iPad Pro since getting it. That's, if you average that out, that's like 2 a year. I am just never using the iPad Pro to take photos. It's just not something I do. I always have my iPhone in my pocket, so if I wanna quickly snap an impressive photo, I'm using my iPhone to do so. Never using this thing. So is it cool that we get an ultra wide camera on the 2020 iPad Pro? Yeah, I mean, sure, I guess so. It's not something I'm personally probably ever going to use, but okay, sure. Definitely a more useful camera than a telephoto lens on the iPad, that's for sure, but still, a lens I'm probably not gonna use nonetheless. But what I think is the main attraction here in the new camera housing on the new iPad Pro is this little circle off to the right. That is the LiDAR scanner. The LiDAR scanner, or light detection and ranging sensor. Basically, the basic way I could explain that, the most simplest way I could explain what the LiDAR sensor does is that it creates a depth map of the environment around you. Basically, that LiDAR sensor is just using light and a little bit of Apple magic to scan the environment around you and literally make up a depth map, a 3D render of the environment around you. Now, what is the purpose of such a scanner? Really, I think it boils down to just one thing: augmented reality. AR. I know for me personally, I might use it a little bit to see if I'm doing some decorating and I have the AR and like the Amazon app or something like that, but besides that, my need for AR is pretty limited. And I know AR is only gonna get bigger and better from here on out. So yes, the potential is there, AR is pretty cool, the LiDAR scanner is gonna help that, but for me, and probably for most consumers, AR is still probably not a huge must-have feature. Where I would have liked to have seen a little bit of improvement, however, is on the selfie camera, or the front-facing camera. I definitely definitely use the front-facing camera on the iPad Pro way more than anything on the back of the iPad Pro. And I'm mostly using the selfie camera not to take selfies, but instead for FaceTime, video conferencing, or sometimes to hop in a stream. If someone's live streaming, I could just use my iPad Pro, especially if I'm on the go, to do so. I definitely like FaceTiming on the iPad Pro the most, especially considering the picture-in-picture multitasking technology we have built in to the iPad Pro iPad OS. 7 megapixels f2.2 selfie camera right there, so not bad. It is 1080, but that's pretty much all we're getting out of it. I would have liked to have seen the selfie camera on the new iPad Pro, the 2020 iPad Pro, at least match that of the iPhone 11 or the 11 Pro. That would have at least given us 12 megapixels and at least a little bit of 4K technology that we could have worked with to make, you know, your FaceTime calls, and maybe if you record on your iPad, if you do that, just to look a little bit more crispier, get a little bit more resolution out of the thing. But that's pretty much it as it relates to the rear camera housing. That is literally the only physical difference you're going to see, that new housing on the back there. Everything else, identical. The other main difference of the 2020 iPad Pro, however, is not on the outside, you probably guessed it, it's on the inside with an A12Z BIONIC chip. But for me personally, I've already found the A12X chip in the 2018 iPad Pro to be pretty sufficient for all of my needs. I have no problem multitasking, even with a little bit of creative work if I'm doing some video or photo editing. I'm not noticing any kind of lag. It's smooth, it's buttery, it's snappy. It's a very impressive tablet. So I was curious to see what kind of difference the A12Z chip in the 2020 iPad Pro would realistically make. And as it turns out, is it gonna make that big of a difference? Probably not. Yes, on paper, the A12Z BIONIC chip is gonna outperform the A12X BIONIC chip, or at least one would assume. But I will say, after running some benchmarks, running some tests, I've actually found the A12Z BIONIC chip to be pretty much the same, or if not just a little bit better than the A12X BIONIC chip. In other words, the processing power of the 2020 iPad Pro is perhaps a little bit better, but not substantially better than the 2018 iPad Pro. Benchmarks really weren't that drastically different on the 2020 iPad Pro, and even with something like video editing, running a few tests, export times didn't seem to be that different at all either. And even Travis MCP, who you guys probably know, he's another creator here on YouTube, he actually uses his iPad Pro as his video editor for his YouTube videos. And he did some tests, he did the same thing, he was comparing the 2018 iPad Pro to the 2020 iPad Pro and noticed pretty much no difference at all in export times when he was exporting video on his iPad Pro. So again, A12Z BIONIC chip sounds good, sounds like it's a lot better than the A12X, but at least from the tests I've run, at least from the tests I've heard others run, not substantially different, if at all. And that's pretty interesting considering on all models of the 2020 iPad Pro, you have 6 gigs of RAM as opposed to just 4 gigs of RAM on all models of the 2018 iPad Pro, except for the 1 terabyte model. So even with those 2 additional gigs of RAM, we're not seeming to notice a huge increase as it relates to performance. An increase, yes, but for practical purposes, you might not actually notice it. Just saying. But as a standalone chip in the 2020 iPad Pro, the A12Z BIONIC chip is still a chip. It's certainly worth applauding because it's super powerful. It is a phenomenal chip. Besides that, we are getting a lot of the same. We still do have that beautiful liquid retina display on the iPad Pro itself, which I've come to love. It's not quite as great as the OLED display I'm seeing on my 11 Pro Max, but for my purposes here, still pretty impressive. And the fact that the display on the iPad Pro is 120 Hertz, definitely noticeable. I personally love that. I definitely like that. I wish the iPhone had that. Maybe this year, we'll see. So beautiful liquid retina display, 120 Hertz, still love it. And we still have very good quality microphones and quad speakers that definitely impress. And last but not least, in terms of storage, you still have the same storage options, 256, 512, 1 terabyte, except now the entry-level iPad Pro in the 2020 model actually starts 128 as opposed to the 64 entry-level storage option that is the start in the 2018. I already made a whole video on this channel talking about that, how I don't even know why a 64 gig model was an option on a Pro device, but not gonna rant about that again, there's a video for that already. But you take all that and the accessories that you could use with the iPad Pro, and this thing is still a beast. It's just now slightly more of a beast than it was before. And speaking of accessories, we do now have a new Apple accessory, the Apple Magic Keyboard. You guys have already seen me unbox this thing on this channel. This thing, so far, I'm loving it, but it is so incredible, so impactful that it actually deserves its own review video on this channel. The fact that you get a trackpad and a backlit keyboard that you could use with a tablet device now while using the Magic Keyboard, kind of speaks for itself. The power in that is pretty incredible. So definitely be sure to check out my review video of the Magic Keyboard because like I said, the two kind of go hand in hand. I definitely recommend using both of them together, but as it relates to just the review of the 2020 iPad Pro, this is where we stand. At the end of the day, here is basically what I'm thinking. The 2020 iPad Pro is probably not what you think. It's probably not what you think in a couple different ways. First of all, it is not a huge step up over the 2018 iPad Pro. Secondly, it's not really meant to be a huge step up over the 2018 iPad Pro. And lastly, at the same time, this 2020 iPad Pro is really only meant to be a refresh of the 2018 model. This is kind of supposed to be like the baseline, and then this is kind of the cherry on top. But with that having been said, unless you're an iPad photographer, unless you're doing some kind of AR work, or unless you actually prefer those 2 extra gigs of RAM, chances are the 2020 iPad Pro, the upgrades you're getting in it, aren't really gonna make or break your decision on which one to get. As a whole, you really can't knock the 2020 iPad Pro. It's literally just the 2018 iPad Pro, but a little bit better. If you're buying an iPad Pro for the first time and you have the budget, I can almost guarantee you will not be upset with your purchase of the 2020 iPad Pro. But if you're already the proud owner of a 2018 iPad Pro, unless you're an iPad photographer, AR developer, or if you absolutely need those little bit of bump up in specs, chances are there's nothing in the 2020 iPad Pro that's really gonna blow your mind, apart from what is already blowing your mind in the 2018 model. But another thing to consider here too is if you don't find yourself in need of that LiDAR scanner or the additional bump up in specs, maybe all you need is the 2018 iPad Pro. Maybe you could save a couple $100 if you are a first-time iPad Pro buyer and just get the 2018 model. Again, it's really all gonna come down to your personal preference, your personal needs. And with that having been said, it definitely gets a check mark in my book. I love this thing. But if you guys wanna find out more information about the 2018 iPad Pro and the 2020 iPad Pro, you guys could actually head to my affiliate links for both, bmac.link/2018 iPad Pro or bmac.link/2020 iPad Pro. Both of those links will bring you to the product page for these 2 different iPad Pro models where you could find out a little bit more information, or better yet, just cop one for yourself. So definitely be sure to check out those links, or as always, they will be in the video description box below where you could click them as well. So check them out. Please be sure to smash that thumbs up button, and do me a favor while you're at it, actually comment down below your thoughts on the new iPad Pro in the comment section below. I will see you guys in my next video. I wonder if I take a picture of the rear camera housing on the 2020 iPad Pro, print it out, and paste it over the rear camera housing of the 2018 iPad Pro, if anybody would know the difference. I'm gonna go do that.